Hello, welcome to the Fashion Minority Alliance Fest. And I'm just going to go through as it looks from left to right and get everybody to introduce themselves, starting with Shanita Hubbard.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. I think I may be the only person here that is based here in the States. I'm from New York. I am a professor, a writer, and author of an upcoming book, Miseducation, A Woman's Guide to Hip Hop. And most importantly, I am the writer of an amazing Black girl named Jordan. I am the mom of an amazing Black girl named Jordan. I always gotta shout my baby out. She loves it.
You, Miss Sandra Scott, tell me about yourself. Tell us about yourself.
Hey, it's great to be here today. Thank you so much, Femi, for organizing it so that I could join. So I'm based in London, like Femi is, and I think Jord is. And I am a label manager, international label manager. I've worked in the music industry for a long time in many different guises, currently working for a distribution company. We distribute every single genre from country, hip hop, jazz, and everything in between. So I get involved in all the territories around the world outside of the UK and the US. So that's it in a nutshell.
Good. And last but not least, Jord.
How's it going? Yeah, I'm Jord. I'm a musician from South London, Croydon. I'm also the co-founder of Pitney Uniforms, which is a uniform-based social enterprise that works on giving children that are on free school meals free school uniforms. And yeah, that's me.
Community. I kind of want to just dive into this.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah, there's questions. So I think some of you have answered this a little bit, but a little bit about your journeys is one of the first questions they asked. So Janita.
Shanita.
Janita. I need glasses just like you.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Sure. I'll consolidate it. I used to be, I always tell people, I'm 41, but I had like 75 different career paths. Like once upon a time, I was a therapist dreaming of being a writer, right? But one thing that's always been consistent has been my love of hip hop. Like my love for hip hop, it's been ingrained in me since I was younger. So one day I found myself like writing, right? I started a small little blog just to kind of keep myself sane and kind of like get my thoughts out. And then it kind of just really blew up. So I went from my tiny little blog to writing for the Huffington Post, and then writing for the New York Times, and then writing for Pitchfork. So, and I still along the way was, I transitioned from becoming a therapist and went into academia because somehow I thought that was going to be less stressful, but so here I am now. I am a speaker, I am a writer, and I am a professor. And most recently, I was featured in a documentary on the Record, which was a film about Russell Simmons survivors. And then also I was in a film contextualizing what this means for Black women in the United States and hip hop. So as of late, I've been doing having a lot of conversations around that. It's a long overdue conversation, and I'm happy to have it in different forms. So here I am.
Wow, that sounds deep.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Sandra? Your journey.
I think I said earlier that I've been in this game a long time, and it's one that I fell into in my 20s. Got a job for a PR a very dodgy PR company that would pay me once a week and the check would bounce. But it was it was so fun.
That long ago.
Yeah, yeah, we had checks back then, and the bailiffs would show up now and again to the office because the guy I was working for he was a very colourful character, I'll put it like that. And you know, I even though I wasn't, I think at the time I was trying to get into advertising and PR, and I was knocking on all these doors, and you know, it wasn't happening. You know, you might show up and they go, oh, no, no, thank you. And yeah, because my name is, you know, until I walk in the door, they were like, oh yeah, come in. And then it was like, shit, no.
Like London.
Yeah, so there was a lot of that anyway, and I kind of fell into this job because this guy was looking for an assistant, and it was lots of rock music. It was rock, it was Duran Duran, which was okay, but it was rock. It's not my world. And I was sat in the office with, you know, the two white guys who were lovely guys, but it was kind of alien. But it was fun, and it was fun, and you know, it started my journey in the industry. I've been a manager to artists, I've done PR across the board, film, music, you know, because you get into it and you think you can, at that time anyway, I thought I could operate on all the levels, but what you realize is that there's your whole Black community doing stuff that needs, you know, making films, writing books, dancers, DJs, clubs, the whole thing. It's like, that's where I needed to put my energy. So yeah, it's been a great journey, frustrating at times, obviously, because of all the politics that comes with being in the music industry and being Black in the music industry. But yeah, I'm still here, and I think once you're in it, it's quite hard to get out. It kind of sucks you in because you're surrounded by creatives, and that's, you know, I love that, and I love helping people, specifically creative. So yeah, I'm a lifer, I think. Nice. So that's me.
So you told us a little bit about what was going on with you, George.
Yeah. So I just loved you guys' stories as well. It's really interesting hearing about your stories, to be honest. But my story, I feel like it's more boring. So I've always had a relationship with music. My cousin was a songwriter. He'd written for like Whitney Houston and Brownstone and quite a lot of people back.
That's what you call boring.
But that's not my story, though. Do you know what I mean? That's not me. That's his life. But yeah. So he taught me about melody when I was young, and figured out a way to like create a melody by singing phone numbers and remembering phone numbers by turning them into a melody and then reciting them back. So I can still remember like all my childhood phone numbers, yeah. But yeah, so I've always had some sort of relation with music. Going to school, having friends that were more into like grime, UK hip hop, American hip hop as well. I just wanted to really get into music and rap. I was really smart in school. Parents wanted me to go to uni and be a lawyer or a doctor or something like that. But I rebelled against authority, and I dropped out at every possible opportunity but the only thing that was consistent in my life was music. That was the only thing that allowed me a space to like be myself completely. So I just always made music, and it kind of snowballed into some sort of career where I'm still here doing the same thing that I did on the come up. But with the stuff more related to community, there was a period of time when I wasn't working and I wasn't trying to do anything wrong for money. So I was in Shoreditch one day, and there was a charity called Key Changers that were putting on an event, and they work in music and mental health. So they provide studio sessions for people that have been in psychiatric wards, etc. And I just fell in love with the energy that I got from the people that were there. So I started working for Key Changers. I became a trustee, and I always just thought, in some way, shape, or form, I want to bring it back to Croydon, which is where I grew up. And then I just had an idea about creating a uniform company with a friend of mine. So we created the uniform company, and then it snowballed into providing free school uniforms for kids on free school meals, because, you know, there's always some sort of community form. But regarding like experience in the industry, I'm a signed artist. I'm signed to EMI, and you know, like was said before, you have the politics of the industry, and it is a bit draining, being a black man and having to consistently fight to be yourself. Do you know what I mean? And then when you see, but now I think in my level, the team that's around they reflect who I am more. There's a lot of black women in the team, which is, I think that's like so valuable. There's just a bit more representation, but at the same time, there's so much more that can be done. There's just so many things that need to be unlearned and then relearned before there's some real progress. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's me in as big a nutshell as possible. So.
Well, all of you have immediately touched on the sort of next area, the whole idea of what are the main challenges that you've kind of faced.
There's a lot, that's such a large question. Like, so what are some of the challenges in the music industry, right? So one of the things, I think one of the biggest challenges, just being a Black woman who loves hip hop, right? That's immensely challenging in itself. And on some levels, it even feels contradictory. And it's incredibly hard at times. And it's something that I'm constantly having that internal dialogue with myself with. And the best way that I can explain it is, it's not that different from what it's like to be a Black woman living in America, right? I'm still here. We are no strangers to the history and current politics and the current climate of America, right? But everything, and I will say this anywhere, everything great about America is because Black Americans has pushed it to live up to the ideals that it has made it be, right? From fighting against Jim Crow and fighting, you know, in the civil rights movement, everything that makes America great is because Black Americans has made it perform to its best level possible. And it's not so different about, and I am like really committed to do that within hip hop. Like hip hop was birthed to be a vehicle, to be a microphone for those of us with marginalized voices, right? It started in the South Bronx, it started in the hood, but it's also ours. It was also started by Black women, for Black women. We helped birth it and to grow it, right? And it's still so many things in that culture that are harmful to us. So how do I respond to that? How do we handle that? Like, that's a huge challenge. And one of the things that I'm committed to doing is pushing. I believe that hip hop can be better, right? So I'm committed to pushing hip hop to be in the best version of itself. And one of the challenges in doing that is having these conversations and holding people accountable who you kind of grew up listening to, who are your role models, who are dope. And then you grow up and you start looking at them from a different perspective, like, wow, okay, like you are harmful, like, right? So it kind of, and then having to hold those people accountable. And if I can speak more specifically, I'm in the film On the Record, right? Which was hard to be. If you're a hip hop head and you're from New York, Russell Simmons is that dude. Like, and it was so hard and heartbreaking for me to hear these Black women tell these stories about rape, and I believed them instantly, right? So that's one of the many challenges, right? Of understanding that, you know, taking off the rose-colored glasses, looking at people that you once knew as heroes, trying to figure out how to deal with that cognitive dissonance, right? So one of the challenges is, as a Black woman, just looking at some of your heroes from a different perspective. Another challenge is holding people accountable, right? What does accountability look like? And another challenge is like staying committed to pushing hip hop to be like the best version of itself.
That's amazing. And yeah, I can see you're trying to meet that challenge from the get-go because of the way you're addressing it now. I mean, obviously, if there wasn't a certain Robert Kelly, we'd say that that was our Harvey Weinstein moment, but we got a few. However, just listening to you talk about it, even in the first place, and the contradiction of loving hip hop as a woman, it does make me think, you know, it reflects society. Sometimes, you know, and this is going to come up again, but sometimes we it's almost like we put it, because it's so it's an art, and it has this emotive engagement that we have with it, that we start putting it into this almost fairy tale world, when really it's people, and unfortunately they're capable of all kinds of things. So can I move to Sandra on the similar subject?
Yeah, I you know,
The
just
challenges, your challenges,
yeah,
big
just wanted
challenges in the industry.
I just wanted to continue the theme really, where you know, this it is very, that the contradiction of loving hip hop, as maybe we all do on this call, you know, is a challenge all the time. And you know that you realize that it is a reflection of society, but where does it, when do we stop using that as an excuse? And I guess it is an excuse, and it's tough because you've got these corporations that, you know, give it life. You know, the more controversial the lyrics are, and the artists can be, that's where labels want to sign them up, because people buy into that, and that's across the board. And the music industry, yeah, it's like this magical place, and the people are all magical. Artists, when they get to us, the artists and also the executives, when there's success happening, they're almost untouchable. You know, and so that does become a challenge, because like you say, it embroils innocence in horrible situations sometimes, and sometimes it can be just as, you know, it doesn't even have to be as deep as rape and abuse. It can just be everyday things, like working in it, you know, everyday things where you see people change because they may be attached to something that's becoming successful. They're not the artists, it's not their story, but they're attached, and therefore they feel they have certain powers. It's like superpowers are thrown out because you become this successful artist or exec. And so I guess my challenge has always been, at some point I wanted to climb and do well in the business, but I could always see, being in it and being one of the few Black women in it in London, back in those days, you know, late 80s, 90s, I saw things that I knew I would never feel comfortable being involved with. I couldn't lend myself to it. It didn't sit well. So, and partly you need to get into that kind of behavior, be it drug taking, sleeping around, because that's all part of it, and part of all of these industries, not just music, but it seems more rife in music. And you feel like, yeah, if you're not willing to go a certain route, you know, you can be stopped in your tracks. You know, it's like, okay, you're going to stay just there. And yeah, I guess that's been a challenge for me, because I haven't, you know, I don't run companies apart from when I've run my own. Within these corporations, I have a very middle level, you know, and I'm good with it now, just because I'm older and I don't have that, you know, big exciting energy about it all anymore. Now it's really level and it's paying the bills. But yeah, you know, I think those challenges prevent people rising through the ranks where maybe they should have, especially women. And, you know, I go from late 80s through the 90s, right through to now. And, you know, I always thought, yeah, things are really going to change. They're going to be hugely different in this decade. I mean, I probably didn't even look this far ahead, but you knew, like, what, 20 years time, there's going to be women running things. And, you know, you look at these big companies and the percentage of women in top roles, in senior roles is, I mean, minuscule. It's embarrassingly so. And I guess they're trying to change that. Last year, we all saw what happened last year. There was a huge shift after the George Floyd situation. There's been a huge shift in everybody's mindsets. I think, and a lot of companies have jumped on board to make them look good. And you know, I'm sitting here, like I'm sure all of you are, just hoping that it's not just ticking a box and it's not just for show. It's actually, you know, we are going to make some new stories and get into this and create a new narrative.
Right. Well, this Fashion Minority Alliance is a good starting point, because it's started by women, and already there's 50% of women on the panel. So hopefully we're moving in the right direction starting here. So have you got anything to add to the challenge question, George?
Yeah. So I think just continuing from your point, it's about being the change, and just being the change as much as you can. Like, I think just for me personally, from my music to the team that I put around me, to the things that I engage in, and just the way that I carry myself, I'm just trying to do better than what I see, to be honest. If I see something and I see that it's wrong, you have to just call it out. But when you're the person that has to call things out how they are, especially like for example, with the George Floyd situation, I released a song straight away called Black and Ready, and the label did get behind it. They were luckily very helpful, but then at the same time, it's like I realized that a lot of it ended up being, it can be seen as tokenism, because it's like, there's just the first you put the first song out and then, okay, cool, but what more are you going to do after this song? Are you going to profit off of this song? How's that gonna work? But so you have to kind of, like I said, it's about fighting to be yourself sometimes, and fighting to do the right thing. And it's not because the industry is trying to do the wrong thing. It's just that the way these things are set up, they've not been set up by us for us. So that kind of thing seems a bit hard to maneuver around. There's a lot of things that seem quite hard to maneuver around, and but like I said, all you can do is be the change. Like was said previously, we can't change everything, but what we see that we can change, let's change that. But at the same time, I think there are a lot of challenges. Getting Black women in the room is something that I'm like I'm very intent upon doing that. I think it's just important, because like if I'm in the room, that means there's Black men in the room. So let me try and get some Black women in the room as well, and get their voice heard, because there's a lot of rooms that I'm in with Black women, and their voices and ideas aren't necessarily heard first and foremost. So yeah, there's a lot of layers to it. There's quite a few challenges, but at the same time, you've got to solve the problem that you see. So yeah,
I like what you're saying there.
Can I chime in? Can I chime in real quick?
Please.
So that was both George and, I'm sorry, am I saying your name right, George?
Yeah.
George and Sandra said like really great points in terms of challenges, right? George talked about, you know, finding a way to kind of like call a thing, right? Calling something out. And then Sandra talked about pretty much what I would call like, you know, what we would call over here, just squatting up. Like, you're not by yourself in this, right? You know, and you can't do this by yourself. one of the things that's hard, particularly here, like in the world of journalism as a writer, especially in the context of George Floyd, or when anything happens, right? The first thing an editor will do is, it feels like they're like, let me find a Black person, right? How did you feel? Contextualize this. What's going on? What is this like? You know, so can you write a piece? Can you give us 1,200 words by tomorrow, right? So then you have to weigh this. Sometimes I'm asked to do this, to respond, to contextualize, to teach when I'm still mourning, when I'm still hurting, when this is still breaking my heart. These are not just stories I could turn off, right? This is like, it's so much deeper for me than what it is for the people that's asking me to, what's happening, right? So then you still have to hold that with, okay, should I be happy to be asked to be invited in the room? I'm happy that they're having a Black woman, you know, they come into a Black woman to write about this, you know, because I would be infuriated if they didn't, you know, especially about this topic. But damn, I'm hurting, I'm still mourning. I can't, you know, so how do, like, one of the challenges is learning to balance when, okay, I have to call it out, I have to speak about this, you know, call a thing, versus when I'm still mourning, right? And feeling, or hurting, right? And feeling compelled to do it constantly and never get a, you know, like a second. So it just reminded me of something that Sandra said, is something I have to always remind me, like, I am not the only one, right? It's not just me, right? So it's not only remembering that you can't do this by yourself. It's also remembers that you don't have to do this by yourself. So yes, we have to call things out. For me, let's call things out and call things a thing. But this year, especially during COVID, I really had to learn that, you know, I could squat up, I could tag in another teammate when I can't do it. No, I can't do it alone, but I also don't have to. So they guys just mentioned that and made me think about that.
I really like that viewpoint, because it is about people being together and understanding that they can move forward. That's
and sorry, Femi, and I think for us for us people in any industry, I think it's always really difficult to how we've been socialized. It's really difficult sometimes to feel that we can buddy up and squad up, you know, because we have been socialized to, like, you know what, I'm the only one in the room and I'm like gonna kind of keep myself to myself and keep it that way. And I mean, I hope that's changing, and I think it changes from the top down. And, you know, the more of us in a building or in a room, the more naturally we're going to work together and bond together.
Definitely. No, can I just add to that, if possible? I just wanted to say, like, being someone that's in that, like, new generation industry where people are coming up and cutting right through, it's very nice to hear that. First and foremost, it was very nice to hear that, because it feels like we've got a team, like, behind us, you know what I mean, that's, like, willing us on. Because I think a lot of young people younger than myself as well, like, as soon as you get through, all you hear is the negative, I just call it noise. It's just noise. People just saying things that are taken away from the achievement. And sometimes just being can be the best thing that you can do. So, like, if you're someone that is making drill, for example, and you're making a lot of the lyrics are quite profane, you know, you're talking about a lot of things that, you know, no one should be glorifying. But like you said, you give that person a different platform, they'll have a different story because they're living a different life. And sometimes them being the example and being the person that, oh, I've won a MOBO, for example, or oh, I've won for a Mercury Award, that is showing people that have come from where they come from that, oh, I can do this, man, and I can be myself on the way up. And then I can have my friends around me. So my manager, I've taken him out the hood as well, and now he's got an executive job at EMI, for example, yeah. And that kind of thing is, I think we got given the platform to do that by having some people in the room, but now I think there's a fearlessness amongst us and a recognition that there are all these infrastructures that are, like, coming to an end. In my opinion, I think they're just not. We're seeing that it doesn't make sense. Like, I just see when I see things that don't make sense, I can't even sleep because I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. So why can't we just change it? Like how do we go about changing this as soon as possible? So yeah, I just wanted to add that it's just being in that generation, but it's nice hearing that we have support. But at the same time, there are still headaches and struggles by just, I'd say, trauma porn. I think there's a lot of trauma porn at the moment. I think there's a lot of like you said, there's a lot of exploitation of these situations.
You know what I was thinking about in terms of like, you know, tearing each other down? Like you guys are you familiar with the term like, oh, crabs in a barrel? Sometimes Black people act like crabs in a barrel, pulling each other down. But I also heard, I can't remember where I heard this quote from, but it just stayed with me. You have to remember that a barrel isn't a crab's natural habitat. Right? There's nothing natural about a crab being in a barrel, right? So they're doing some extreme, displaying extreme behaviors because it's an extreme environment, right? So I think that so much of it is true in terms of how we engage with each other. And I think about what could facilitate that type of change, right? And I'm in terms of like within hip hop, within the context of hip hop, there has to be some type of power shift, right? And I think now, and maybe you guys can speak more to this, I'm wondering now, right, if we can see more of a power shift in the hip hop industry, right? Where it's not about these powerful executives that have the ability to, you know, change Lil Jon, you know, Lil Rakim's life so quickly. Like they have this power in their hand. I could take you and your whole family out the hood, but first I need you to perform a version of Blackness that fits into my head, right? So what is this little poor kid going to do? He probably will perform, right? And then that's how we end up with tons of trauma porn, tons of the same type of like harmful material over and over again. So I'm wondering if now that music is like, here we are in 2021, where we see like a lot of more independent artists, right? Relying on things like streaming services and social media to kind of grow their platform. I'm wondering if we're going to see, because we have this ability for independent artists to, you know, perform the art that they want to perform and put it out there, will we see some type of power shift, right? Will there be a power shift, and will this impact the type of art that we're going to see?
That's very interesting. And there's actually one of the questions that they're talking about here on the fest to do with streaming and stuff. But this also connects, what you were talking about actually connects, I'd say, well, I'm going to make it connect anyway. Some people play the game, others change it. So what would we say have been the disruptors in the music industry that have made long-lasting change? Be that an artist or executive in your collective experience?
I'll start. I'll give quite a more recent one. I'd say Frank Ocean, with what he did, the way he
Wait, I didn't hear the name. Can you say the name again?
Frank Ocean, sorry.
Oh, Frank Ocean, okay.
Yeah. When he released was it Endless and then Blonde in like the space of a week or something, but he released Endless apparently to get out of his deal, and then signed another deal with Apple Music for the next week. And then I think the way he was able to maneuver himself through that situation to give him and his team the best possible opportunity to release the music that they wanted to, and play the game on their own terms, was quite, as an artist in the middle of it, to be honest, I found that like very admirable. It's a very brave thing to do. And off the back of that, I think a lot of artists realize that we are the asset. Like the artist is, you don't have any of this without the music. You don't have these conversations without the music. So the music is the most valuable thing, and the people making the music are the most valuable thing. But like you said, with the the power of the executive before, where you could just click your fingers and you and your whole family are taken out the hood. I think the artist always gave the power to the label, so that meant them conforming and doing things that they didn't necessarily want to do, but that they did do because someone's paying them a check, for example. And but now seeing more artists playing the game on their own terms, like I said, it's that fearlessness. It goes back to that fearlessness. So yeah, Frank Ocean for me.
And for you, Sandra?
Oof, I guess
So they could be artists or they could be someone behind the scenes.
gosh, I think that God, there are so many.
Disrupt.
I think I'd probably go with, and just because I was doing the PR at the time, back in the very early 90s, was the whole Soul to Soul movement, Jazzy B. And just at that time in the music industry, we were not that visible, you know, as people, and having an artist and not just an artist, but a whole collective of people, you know, they were covering music, they had their club night, they had the clothing, they had this whole industry going on, and it was, for me at that time, very inspirational. And also being quite fresh in the music industry, and having the privilege of working with them at that time, just, you know, I think maybe I was a little bit spoiled having had that, because it was like, wow, these guys, they're calling shots, you know, they're actually signed to this label, which was Virgin at the time, but they got it sewn up, they're calling shots. And for me, it was very motivational, very inspirational, just at that time where we really didn't have the visibility in the industry, or the power, and they were showing that, you know what, we were bringing our whole crew, our army, were covering all these bases, and we are getting #1 records in the chart. It was unheard of, and for me it's historical, and you know, definitely in the UK music annals, it goes down as one of the key moments in time.
I think where it came from that sound system culture, that bass culture, which did carry on. I mean, you can know that it's like the grandfather of where grime and that ended up. And
absolutely, well, you know, and look, the sound system culture birthed hip-hop culture, right? It has, it's, you know, it came from Jamaica. So to see, and you're, you know, as a London, as somebody Black and growing up in London through the 70s, and living in that culture and seeing it,
that's all we had to go out to, blues dance.
Yeah, and it was tiny, and you created your own scene because you had to, out of necessity. You weren't being welcomed into nightclubs run by, you know, white club runners and stuff. So you created your own scene, and to see it go from that time, you know, little shebeens, house parties, little, you know, sweaty underground clubs, to seeing this guy and his crew take it to a world stage, because there was, you know, it went to America, you know, the music spread globally, and it was like I say, super inspirational for me at that point. I think that made a big difference to the Black music industry, you know, even to this day. They set a little blueprint. So yeah, that's mine. I got a million more, I'm sure.
I'm sure. But that was a powerful one. That's a powerful one. A powerful privilege to be part of the team that helped grow that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Shanita.
Sure, it's like Anita with the shot in front of it. So, but
yeah, I said Shanita, didn't I?
Yeah,
you good. This is, I love this question because I love the way George and Sandra answered it. I could like sit back and just listen to them talk all day. But if I think about, for me, I think we're all speaking it from different, depending on our careers, right? And where we are within the industry or on the cusp of the industry, we kind of answer it differently. For me, when I think about people that shook the game up, that changed the industry, right? I think about people that pushed it to be better. And for me, these are the journalists, right? That ask the tough questions, that hold artists accountable to make sure that we don't have people out here performing a version of Blackness that, you know, meets the standard by some white exec, or constantly just putting out lyrics and content and music that's incredibly just harmful for women, Black women in general, right? It's the journalist that's been asking these tough questions. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dream Hampton. She's the director from the Surviving R. Kelly docuseries. But even before that, she was one of the very few Black female hip hop journalists in the game. And Dream has always had incredible integrity. And Dream has always asked the really tough questions, things that I wouldn't, it's not even questions that we're thinking, just think questions that once she asked them, I'm like, wow, we should be having these conversations. So she was really pivotal in introducing a lot of the conversations that we're just having now. So she really shook the table in terms of that it's even possible to have a conversation about accountability with the most powerful among us. And it's even possible that there could be accountability, right? And it's even possible that those least powerful among us, the Black girls in the hood, they can have, you know, a voice. So Dream really shook the table in terms of like what's possible in this industry. So for me, I'd have to give it up to her. And I keep saying Drew because in the back of my head, I'm thinking about Drew too. Drew Dixon. She's the lead subject in a Russell Simmons documentary. And I hate it when people are like, oh, that's one of the Russell Simmons accuser, as if she didn't have a whole career in the music industry, right? She was the one that put Meth and Mary together for You All I Need. Like she always had like this dynamic ear, like she's such a force and she's so powerful. And she's opened up doors and touched careers that we don't even think of. We don't even think about how when we see these careers. So yeah, so those two women for me just really will, you know, table shakers in this industry.
What would you say? How would you say hip hop came about? I know this is very open-ended, and how rap is a vehicle to document injustice in society. So I'm going to go with Sandra first.
It's such a big question, isn't it? And I think you know, sorry. Yeah, I think I just said previously that, you know, hip hop is from us. It is us, right? It's our lifestyle. If we can get into, yeah, you know, the history, you know, and like I say, talk about it, you know, the sound system culture from Jamaica that helped spawn the scene, the music, the lifestyle, and then, you know, it as it moves through the world and as it's grown, it's gone from, I mean, it informs fashion, politics. Like I say, you know, there's four corners of hip hop as well, right? So it's such a big question, and I'm trying to answer, and I don't think I can necessarily, but it's hip hop is our media, isn't it? It started out as our media. It's like the social media platforms that you have today. Hip hop was that. It's dancehall is that. You go to Jamaica and, you know, back in the day, they called it toasting, you know, chatting on the mic, rapping on the mic. You're telling stories about from where you come from and what's important to you or what's affecting or afflicting you. And we are just very creative people. So out of that spawns everything else, you know, it informs and influences everything else. So yeah, I think that's all I can manage to get out, because it's the whole, I feel like that topic right there is a panel in itself. I don't think you can cover it in a, and I know we've run out of time already. So yeah, it's that's what I would say.
I think that's a very almost impossible question to answer in such a short amount. That's a whole panel discussion in itself, because like you said, the four corners of hip hop and how much hip hop, you know, has grown and how much it has touched and how much changed. We can literally we've already been here for over an hour. That's such a large question.
Yeah, and we were supposed to be 45 minutes.
Yeah.
What about the idea? I think this was dealt with a bit in the intro, but how do we tackle the amount of negativity towards women artists in the industry? Anybody want to go for that?
I'll give it a go. I think women just need respect, to be honest. I think there's not really much more to it. I think if there's so much, at the end of the day, what it boils down to is that in the industry, for whatever reason, Black women are the least respected, to be honest. Like, it's hard to see it. You see the microaggression, you see it happen every single day. You see, in the grand scheme of things, you see the way white artists are marketed and are sold and mass produced, and it goes worldwide. But when a Black woman writes a song that's probably arguably better than that, they are not given the same push, and they're not given the same love and respect. And on the receiving end, as soon as it comes out, they're getting torn apart by the media for things that I don't know, that I don't really, me personally, I don't see a problem with it. I don't see the reason why they should be called out. And I think as a Black man, I need to hold myself accountable to do better. I need to start with myself. I need to have more, like I said, more Black women on my team. I'm trying to get more Black women through the door, particularly. And at the same time, though, there's still, if I see something from someone else that I would find disrespectful, I need to be maybe a bit quicker to call them out. And, you know, like I said, it starts with myself, and then hopefully people see that and act on that as well, you know, and then hopefully I can have conversation with higher ups and talk to as high up as possible and try and change things from the inside. So yeah, but there's a lot that can be done.
Well, that's really good hearing that from a young artist. That's hopefully the way forward. I think we got to wrap things up. I think
no problem.
We dealt with I'd say a third of the questions, I'll be honest. So, but I do think that it crossed over into quite a lot of the actual questions. You actually touched on a lot of the subjects that we're going to have specific questions about. So I hope everybody was happy with the outcome.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good conversation, to be honest.
This is a good conversation.
We could be in a room together and have time to chat. That would be lovely.
I know.
Lovely to meet you guys.
About that.
It's lovely to meet you all too. One of these days we'll get together in London or something.
Okay, this has been the Fashion Minority Alliance Fest with Shanita Hubbard, Sandra Scott, and George Wilkes, in no particular order, and myself, Femi Williams. We are very happy to have done this, and I hope you guys enjoy what we've spoken about. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.